Alright troops, if you want to see the whole mission, the rest is in a separate video which is in the card at the top right. This is just about how to take down the big man. The first fight is pretty straightforward. He has a total of 6 attacks, so there's not too much to learn, although occasionally he'll use some of them in concert, but it doesn't make things that much trickier. Sky lasers target where you are when he uses them, so you can avoid them easily by staying on the move. The blue ground explosion can't hit you if you're high in the air, making it a fantastic opportunity for free attacks once you're used to the tell for it. Getting hit by the time bubble doesn't matter much since it doesn't do damage by itself, and you can just press double trigger and the slowdown will extend your invulnerability frames to match. He'll almost never use the dual meteors outside of the laser pattern, but when he does, the second one is used immediately and from behind the cover of the first one, so you don't get much time to react if you're not ready for it in advance. Always play as if another meteor is coming. Keeping moving and jumping left or right should keep you safe. Both times he uses it on me in this fight, it's close enough it almost looks like the second one should hit me, but as long as I jump and stay on the move it never will. The hitbox is very forgiving. If you're quick you can use Gerbera on the second one too, but it's hard to react to. His knockback doesn't do any damage, so you can safely get hit by it or double trigger through to avoid its effect without issue. It can't be dodged otherwise. He follows a loose pattern where after a set interval he'll transition to throwing down 2 big lasers then fire 2 meteors at you. With Gerbera this is your best chance to reflect, since as soon as he drops the second laser you know the meteors are coming, and they're spaced apart much further than if he uses them outside of this combination, so you can easily reflect both of them if you're in position beforehand. When the second phase starts, make sure and take your hand off the analog stick. The 2 tentacles spawn in random locations, and if you're moving around there's a chance they'll spawn underneath you. Each attempt at this mission takes about 7 or 8 minutes to get to the boss, so you don't want to throw that away for something as dumb as getting closer to him faster. Take the tentacles out immediately since they never respawn and can cause issues down the line if you ignore them. You don't need to use Gerbera for this fight if you don't want to, although it's my preference more for comfort than anything. Helter Skelter breaks his shield much faster, but Gerbera just makes everything a little smoother with that extra layer of movement. Reflecting his meteors is, of course, extremely cool also, which is the most important part. We're playing DMC here. It can be done with other attacks, but it's way harder to time it right and you're much more likely to get hit. Making sure you don't overstay your welcome when you do attack is important. You really need to weave in and out because even if you invuln through the shield's counter with double trigger activation, it'll counter again much faster this time, so you can't simply abuse double trigger invuln to attack forever. All his moves from the first phase stay intact or get souped up, but can mostly be dealt with the same way. His lasers and blue ground explosions all cover much more space now, and he'll hit with them multiple times in a row, but the exact same tactics apply. Just do them for a bit longer. He'll only ever fire single meteors now too. The big arena makes parrying them require a much better understanding of position and spacing, since you could be all sorts of different distances from him, and they're no longer locked to a pattern. Although he'll usually use them after hitting you with a time bubble, but not always. The larger arena gives you a lot of room to work with, so you can stay on the move constantly and not have to worry about your positioning in the play area itself like you do in the first phase. I found running anti-clockwise to be the most effective, since being off axis to the right of him completely nullifies when he does the large ground laser, and comfortably avoids all phase 1 attacks. Almost all of the new attacks he gets in this phase actually serve to make things easier, except for one which I will be covering in detail later. To keep it simple, all of his melee type attacks can be dodged pretty easily and have the biggest punish windows. His different punches and spin attacks are all very easy to avoid by going over them or backing out of range. They all have huge wind up, so you shouldn't have any trouble getting the height or distance to avoid them. You'll see me dealing with these attacks a lot in this video, and the ideal scenario is being able to triple jump and Gerbera over them, and use taunt to stay in the air until it's time to come down with a punish. His backstep and sweep attacks can be reacted to easily with a neutral jump. Since all of these melee attacks have big punish windows, when his shield is up, staying close to him to try and coax him into using them more often can be very effective for getting more damage, but don't take any risks to do it. You can't truly manipulate his attacks in any real sense, but staying in a range that makes it possible for him to use them will get you more damage opportunities. Now we get to the real terror of this fight, the tentacle attack. This thing has an absolutely deranged hitbox and can only be beaten with invulnerability frames. Its startup animation blends in with a handful of his other attacks and doesn't have a consistent audio cue, and guaranteeing you'll dodge it demands being on the ground, which can be tricky because attacking from the air is the best way to punish so many of his attacks. So it's easy to get caught off guard if you're not ready for it. Depending on your position, straight up reacting to the visual of the tentacle itself may not be possible. If you're too close, you basically have to know how long it takes to come out once he's raised his arm to fire it. On the other hand, at a distance you have to be very careful not to try and dodge too early. Maybe I'm just a dumbass, but I found properly perceiving its depth and distance from me inordinately difficult to learn, which is why I eventually settled on using Devil Trigger almost every single time he attacked with it. This attack on its own, either by itself or simply because of the threat of it in the arena, was the source for almost every single hit I took attempting this fight. Even after hours of attempts at this mission, I'd end up finding out new things about this fucking move. Getting hit from weird timings using patterns I thought were 100% safe. The good news for you is I can now impart this wisdom and skip you suffering through the same thing. Put simply, if that tentacle is coming at you, as it's about to hit, pop Devil Trigger then jump 4 times to the left. It'll look dicey, but you'll never get hit doing this. It sounds like a simple solution, but it was really counterintuitive for me to figure out. If you really focus on the footage here, there are so many times the thing is practically inside me near jump 3 and 4, so in the learning period my instinct was to stay the hell away from it as much as possible. But no, if it's chasing you to the left, I've had a ton of trouble actually scoring the hit on you for some reason. If you jump right, it'll look somewhat similar, except this time there's a good shot it will actually hit you. Same for changing directions. But it'll work 10 times first to make you think it's a good strategy, so skip that part, jump to the left, trust me. So I'm going to repeat this just one more time because it's so important. Devil Trigger, 4 jumps to the left. Keep this in your head because it is the key to this fight. Where this gets particularly tricky is when he uses either the sweeping laser or sky lasers prior to throwing out the tentacle. Sometimes jumping to the left is going to send you into harm's way. This is one of the main reasons constantly moving counterclockwise is so effective. You can keep out of range of these lasers without compromising the strategy. You might have to delay as long as you can before using Devil Trigger, but there are a bunch of times you can see it happen throughout this video, and it should be obvious how much of a non-issue it actually is. It wasn't something I was ever worried about being hit by once I'd developed this strategy. The other scary part of the tentacle attack is mistaking his forward swipe attack for it. Before performing the horizontal swipe in that move, he'll lift his arm and it can be very hard to discern which he's using, especially if you're standing to his side and can't get a clear view of his arm. There's no consistent audio cue here either. If you're close to him when it starts up, there isn't really any safe option that covers both attacks. But to give yourself the best odds, you should start moving away so you have slightly more time to react if you happen to not read the cue correctly. Unfortunately, I can't give you much more advice on this one past playing a lot and really familiarising yourself with the movement. It even trips me up once or twice here, but I managed to just barely react in time. Quite comfortably the closest I came to losing in this attempt. How to use Devil Trigger is another part of the fight you really have to keep an eye on outside of his moves themselves. If you're left without enough meter to activate, it can be your doom. If you're out of position at all in the air or get caught in the time bubble, the only method you have to dodge is activating DT. It's your only solid source of invulnerability frames when you're in the sky. Gerbera has a few, but it's way too tight to rely on as a consistent evade. Gerbera is for position, not invulnerability. When you're topped out on meter, it can be used for some extra aggression since you can invuln through certain attacks and punish them, or use it to avoid his knockback attack. My general rule was to never use it for aggression unless I had a full bar, although I broke it a few times here. If you're more confident in your ability to dodge the tentacle without it, you can definitely go a lot harder, but I'd taken too many silly hits trying to avoid it without DT, so if you're better than me, go nuts. Also, you can turn Devil Trigger off much faster than I do when using it to avoid the tentacle. I debated remapping my controls for this since the main reason I don't turn it off after the first jump is because hitting the D-pad while also trying to jump in a direction gets a bit awkward, but the meter penalty wasn't bad enough that I wanted to retrain my muscle memory. And I also didn't want to suggest something as annoying as that in my commentary, so I learned to do without. The analog stick has to be neutral to get the DT activation animation that has the invulnerability frames, So if you're more confident in your execution to jump between the D-pad and stick without accidentally nudging it on the way and screwing up your activate, go for it. So it goes without saying that Urizen is pretty tough. For my money, the hardest thing to do no damage in the whole series, but his attacks and patterns alone aren't much harder than any other boss, and he is, for the most part, very fair. Where he has everyone beat is in the numbers department. He has an insane amount of health, meaning the fight is really, really long, and it demands you know every single thing about how his attacks work. If you include the first phase, my fight took 11 minutes, and that's with turbo on for a 20% speed increase. So if you have any gaps in knowledge of his moveset, you're probably going to get exposed. Of course, playing too safe and dragging the fight out too long also increases your chances of being hit, since you have more attacks to dodge. One of the trickiest parts of the second phase is how to practice the guy. He can sometimes kill you in a single hit depending on the attack, and you're supposed to lose so it knocks you straight into the mission complete screen with no opportunity to retry. If you're on PC, I'd highly recommend downloading the collaborative cheat trainer and turning on no one takes damage, which I will link in the description. If you're on console and don't have that luxury, I recommend quitting out and restarting immediately as soon as you take any hit. It's a lot less work than replaying the whole mission each time. So in closing, guy's got way too much HP, but his attacks aren't that bad, and you'll be surprised at how quickly he feels beatable after a little practice. If the tentacle comes at you, jump to the left. If he tries to punch you, jump into the air. Keep running anti-clockwise, do this for like 25 minutes and he'll finally die. Hopefully this helps you take this guy down. He's a real juggernaut, felt pretty damn good to finally get it. I'm Zodiac, thanks for watching. Catch you later.